My name is Stephanie Gadalian. I am the president of the UF League of Women Voters, and I'm going to be moderating the State of Florida House of Representatives District 22 panel. So there are two Democratic candidates for this race, David Arreola and Amy Trask, and there are two Republican candidates for this race, Ramey Eagle Glenn and Chad Johnson. Mr. Johnson was unable to attend today due to work commitments. So thank you for joining us, y'all. So the state representatives are elected in a partisan election for 2-year terms and may be elected to up to 4 terms. Candidates must live in the district in which they represent, and there are 4 candidates that will appear on the primary election ballot. The format of the forum will be as follows. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement, and then following the opening statements, I will read questions prepared by the League of Women Voters. And candidates will have 1.5 minutes to respond to each of these questions for a total of 3 questions. You will be able to see the timer when you have 30 seconds left, and when your time is complete, please stop or your microphone may be muted. So for opening statements, we will begin in alphabetical order, and you will have 1 minute. David Arreola, your opening statement.
Thank you to the League for hosting us. It's always a pleasure to be here at the Bob Graham Center, and I want to pay homage to the late Bob Graham. He was an excellent example of what a public official is supposed to be. It's fitting that we're here. I'm a first-generation American, born here in Gainesville, born right here in House District 22. I was the youngest city commissioner ever elected to the city commission here in Gainesville, in District 3, which is also in House District 22. This election is about ending one-party rule in Tallahassee. Look where it has gotten us. We have the most expensive property insurance rates in the country, with the average Floridian paying over $10,000, and it's not getting better. The state legislature has taken reproductive rights and moved backwards by taking away the right for pregnant women to get appropriate consultation for their own health care. Gun violence is a problem that has gotten so bad in this state, but the legislature has decided to roll back the protections that were passed after the horrific Parkland shooting. I'm the most experienced candidate with a proven track record of addressing these pressing issues head on, and I stand by my values and principles. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Trask, your statement, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Amy Trask, and I'm running for Florida State House District 22. I work for Harvard Safra Center for Ethics, and I have a background in conflict resolution, de-escalation, and dialogues across differences. I'm a mom, I'm a neighbor, and I come from a very long line of public servants in this state, starting from the time our Florida Constitution was signed. I've shown up and have spoken out when our liberties were under attack, oftentimes with kids in tow. And my campaign began as a love letter to my children because they were inheriting a Florida I couldn't recognize. We've enforced partisan education, denied history, censored speech, destroyed autonomy, passed discriminatory legislation, and failed to act on critical state issues in favor of culture wars. It's time now that we turn our fear into fuel and to change the way we do politics. Civility, sanity, communicating constructively, and building bridges where we can so we can start putting people first. Again, we need representation that reflects us and understands us. And as a young mom who was on Medicaid, a student with 2 kids and a survivor and an underdog, no one knows that fight harder than me. Thank you.
Thank you. And for our Republican candidate, Ramey Eagle Glenn, your statement, please.
Thank you for having me today, and in the spirit of bipartisanship and to honor the late Bob Graham, I am happy to participate today. I served as the 3rd Republican County Commissioner in Alachua County history. I was appointed by Governor Ron DeSantis and served in 2022. And during that time, I learned to do the most good for the most people, and I also learned that I will not please everyone all of the time. Look, I'm here, and I can sort of guess at the political makeup of the room, and I come before you as an underdog here in this room. So I've learned to live like an underdog, fight like an underdog, and run my campaign like an underdog because I am of the political minority in my own community. And I'm going to take that spirit and that fight to Tallahassee to work on property insurance, to work on hardening our infrastructure, and to work on our food security. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're going to move on to our prepared questions. You will each have 1.5 minutes to answer. We're going to start with our Republican candidate and then move on to our Democrat candidates, first with Amy Trask and then moving on to Mr. Areola. After each question, we are going to reverse the order in which the candidates respond. So for our first question, what issues should cities and counties be able to decide for themselves, and which issues should be preempted by the state? Ramey Eagle Glen, your answer, please.
I do want to go to Tallahassee and look at ways where we can streamline certain permitting processes. We talk about affordable housing, workforce housing, and a lack thereof. And unfortunately, it becomes very difficult to achieve those goals when we have very heavy-handed local ordinances and rules that slow down a permitting process and make it very difficult for people to build such housing. We also tend to make it very difficult for our farmers in Alachua County. We have not only the federal EPA, the DEP, at which I clerked at in 2010 during the Deepwater Horizon oil spill crisis, but we have a third level of environmental protection in Alachua County that is counterintuitive to the goals of trying to house people in our community, counterintuitive to the goals of trying to bring in infrastructure and business opportunities, especially to the east side of Gainesville. And so I do believe that there are some places where preemption of cantankerous and duplicative local ordinances are most valuable for the bipartisan spirit of creating opportunity, building infrastructure, and providing housing.
Thank you. Amy Trask, your response, please.
Thank you so much. I'm a huge proponent for home rule. I was the only candidate that showed up at the JLAC meeting in October in defense of GRU, strictly because of the precedent that it sent, that we have a legal right to home rule, and despite a legal vote, our municipal utility was taken away. I think that there are definitely areas that the state should have control when it comes to domestic violence laws that are in place, major health issues and ordinances that we have in those regards. But for the most part, each city is different, and each city should be able to make legislation that will best reflect their makeup and will best help their constituents to flourish and thrive, because their needs are different. Their makeups are different, and that's what I would say when it comes to land and water conservation, springs protections, how we mitigate climate change impacts. Those are things I think that the city and county should be able to control. I'm firmly against the preemption of electric vehicle infrastructure and major changes like that. So I think that there is room for the state with major things, but home rule should be, it should be the rule of the law.
Thank you. And David Areola, your answer, please.
Thank you. I'm a strong believer in the American federalism system of government. There are supposed to be different levels of government that address different issues. One of the issues that is paramount, that I think the state should absolutely get involved in, is the maintenance and preservation of civil rights. I don't think it is right that other localities should have the ability to infringe on other people's civil rights. I think that that is something that has to be protected at the state level, and it is indeed protected by federal law. I was on the city commission, and I had no idea how difficult Tallahassee was going to make my life. Every time we were trying to address local issues and we would pass ordinances, whether it was renters' rights, whether it was environmental protection, or whether it was living wage requirement for contractors working on city jobs, the next session, the legislature decided to preempt all of that. Short-term rentals, they preempted our regulation to regulate short-term rentals. And so I think that right now the attitude of the legislature is, we know best. We're going to support big corporations and big business over the local governments and their constituents. And I don't think that's right. As the next state representative for this district, I'm going to prioritize the local municipalities, and I'm going to make sure that they are involved in these conversations, because one of the other things that happened when those preemption bills would pass, we never got a call from our state representative. We were never offered on what our thoughts were on these issues. It's time for dialogue to begin.
Thank you. So for our second question, Given the prevalence of gun violence in our society, what steps would you take to make our district a safe place in which to live and work? David Ariola, your answer, please.
This is an issue that I worked on the city commission. I helped to approve funding for sponsorships for gun buyback programs. You would be surprised how many people want to turn in a gun for some cash. This is one way to get weapons off the street. I also think we have to look at common sense solutions, such as requiring secure storage at home. We require secure storage in vehicles. Why wouldn't we secure it at home? Because a lot of gun violence incidents, they are incidents that happen at home with small children or with people who don't know how to operate firearms. I also think we should have more stringent licensing requirements. The Supreme Court just supported the fact that domestic violence abusers cannot purchase firearms while they're under investigation, and there was only one justice who voted against that. So this is fully supported. But what we have in the legislature is a legislature that wants to make it so that everybody can get a gun at any time, anywhere, any place, any kind of gun. No training requirements, no licensing requirements, and they call that constitutional carry. It makes us unsafe. The police chiefs of Florida didn't support it. So this is another example of extremism in our legislature that has to come to an end because it is costing lives. And we have polling that shows it's supported by both parties, some of the solutions I mentioned.
Thank you. Amy Trask, your response, please.
Thank you. So I think it would be an illusion to think that there is only one way to solve this. This is a multifaceted issue. We've heard from our officials that, at least in our district, one of the biggest reasons we have gun violence is because we have break-ins in cars. And so there's a lot of different reasons that we have gun violence. I do think that because it is a multifaceted issue, we need to look at the root cause, which could also be mental health. We need to be fighting to invest in mental health and crisis intervention programs, along with trauma-informed care beginning in early ed. I do think we should highly incentivize safe gun storage at home because there is a high number of children and teen deaths or child and teen deaths because of access. But I also believe that we should be supporting the age restriction of 21. I think we should be taking steps to ensure that people with convictions of domestic violence don't get their hands on weapons. There are universal background checks that we can look into. I think that the step forward is respecting it as a multifaceted approach and respecting the integrity of the issue because it's not just one thing, it's a lot of things. And in order to address it, we need to address the core, the root of the problem, and work outward from there.
Thank you. Ramey Eagle Glenn, your answer, please.
The Second Amendment protects our First Amendment. In the United States of America, we are citizens. We are not subjects. We are not subject to a crown. We are not subject to a dictatorship. And that Second Amendment is an American's right and privilege. I went through the permitting process to lawfully carry a gun when permits were required. However, because I am not quite quick with a gun or well-trained with a gun, I feel like it is irresponsible for me personally to carry one around. And I believe in training with guns and firearms. And I believe that hunting and marksmanship education training should be available to our youth. I believe that when we foster good relationships with our law enforcement community and youth, especially at our elementary schools, we can perhaps provide these offerings of marksmanship, gun range days, and we need to teach respect for the power and the privilege that the Second Amendment is. And I think that education should be for the youth and also for parents for that safe gun storage and that safety education at home. That's where it starts. And I will do everything in my power going forward to protect the Second Amendment. And I believe that criminals do not follow laws. So making more gun laws is not going to solve the problem of gun violence.
Thank you. So for our third and final question, what steps would you encourage the legislature to take to protect Florida from the effects of climate change? Ramey Eagle Glenn, your answer, please.
In 2022, 2 of my family members' homes were flooded by Hurricane Ian in the Fort Myers area. And I didn't catch a break because then in 2023, over here on the coast of Cedar Key, Yankeetown, and all the way up, we had more devastating effects because of hurricanes. So Mother Nature is telling us that we may not get a break this summer either, because NOAA has predicted a higher than average hurricane season, a very active hurricane season. And one of my #1 priorities in Tallahassee is to spend our state taxpayer dollars to harden our coastal infrastructure. And people may say, well, I don't live on the coast. Why does that affect me? Well, because of coastal migration. The cost of living on the coast, the just unending barrage of these storms and floodwaters are making it very difficult for many people to stay there. So where are they coming? They're coming here to what I call the highlands. We are very protected here in Alachua County and Gainesville. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to move here. And other people are following suit. So this goes into our infrastructure with sewage and water systems on the coast, but also our affordable and workforce housing. So it is an investment that we all need to look at in a bipartisan fashion, and I plan to make that one of my top priorities in Tallahassee.
Thank you. Amy Trask, your response, please.
Thank you so much. As a sunshine state, we should be the global leader in renewable energy, especially solar. I would challenge monopoly energy utility companies like FPL for their rate hikes, their efforts to decimate rooftop solar industry. I think we need to, like I said earlier, be investing in land and water conservation, springs protection, mitigating these climate change impacts. My goal would be to transition to clean energy sources. The sooner the better. Promoting sustainable practices, I think we need to invest in shared solar projects to allow low-income communities to access clean energy. And I'd like to integrate solar panels into building materials like shingles or siding or windows. I think finding a way to make it accessible and equitable is going to be the key to mitigating this crisis moving forward. So, thank you.
Thank you. David Ariola, your answer, please.
We have to be honest. Climate change is here. It's not on its way. It's here. I was invited by the mayor of Cedar Key to tour the city, which still is dealing with the fact that the legislature, how does the legislature deal with climate change? Well, they write a law that says we're going to spend all of our money to remove those 2 words from every state law. They're just going to stick their heads in the sand until the water comes and gets over them. That's not what we can afford here in Florida. Cedar Key got hit so hard by flooding by Hurricane Idalia, they retreated their city hall to the hill. They moved their city hall to higher ground because of the dangers of climate change. Now, I want to be very clear. We obviously have to move to renewable energies to mitigate the long-term effects. But what we have to do is prepare for the dangers of extreme flooding, sea level rise, and more extreme weather. This means we have to raise some roads which are currently in danger of being flooded. This means that we have to have higher capacity for strengthening buildings when they're constructed in the danger zones. We have to update our flood maps because right now, the property insurance crisis, that is a crisis of climate change. While the legislature wants to pretend that it doesn't exist, insurance companies have to go home and figure out how are they going to stay in business when the environment is completely in shambles. And you can feel it outside. 12 months in a row, the hottest month on record. 12 months in a row, every month has been the hottest month on record. Years, the heat is just, you can feel it, y'all.
Thank you. So this concludes the panel for state representative and marks the end of our primary forum. Our gratitude goes out to all the candidates who took the time and made the effort to appear here today and to express their views. And to the audience, thank you so much for being here. And y'all remember, your voice is your vote. Thank you.